If you've ever stood at a cruise terminal, bags packed, excitement building, and watched someone ahead of you get turned away, you know it's not just an inconvenience. It's a financial disaster, and the lines won't give you your money back. I've been sailing for more than 20 years across most of the major lines, and I can tell you this: the number of cruisers being denied boarding is going up, not down. The rules are more complex now, the documentation requirements vary by itinerary, and the cruise lines have made one thing crystal clear: it is entirely your responsibility to get it right. Welcome back. If you've been cruising for years, maybe decades, what I'm about to walk you through matters more than almost any other pre-cruise checklist you'll find. I'm going to cover 9 reasons cruisers are being turned away at the dock, some obvious, some that will genuinely surprise you. And I want to flag this now. The one that catches even experienced travelers off guard is coming up in the middle of this, and it has cost people thousands. Stay with me. If this kind of honest, practical information is useful to you, tap the thumbs up, it really does help. And subscribe if you haven't yet. Let's get into it. Number 1, missing the boarding cutoff time. This is not about missing the ship when it sails. The cutoff comes earlier than most people realize, and it is a hard stop. A group of 10 guests on an Oceania Vista Caribbean sailing out of Miami found this out the hard way. The ship was due to depart at 4 in the afternoon. They arrived at 3:30, believing they were safely on time. They were not allowed to check in. The ship's gangway was pulled after they arrived, and it sailed without them. No refund. Every cruise line sets a final boarding time that is typically around 1 hour before departure, and that cutoff exists because of Port Authority requirements from Customs and Immigration. It is not something the ship can waive for you. I always check the boarding documents carefully. On a recent Cunard sailing, the card stated clearly that I needed to be registered and on board by 4:30 in the afternoon, even though the ship wasn't departing until 6. 2 hours difference. Miss that window, and it doesn't matter when the ship leaves. The lesson here is simple. Know your final boarding time, not your departure time. They are not the same. Number 2, using the wrong documents, and specifically, the birth certificate trap. This is the most common reason boarding is denied, and it catches a remarkable number of experienced cruisers. Some itineraries out of the United States, certain Caribbean and Alaska sailings do allow American citizens to board with a certified state-issued birth certificate and a government photo ID instead of a passport. But here's where it goes wrong. Last year, dozens of passengers were denied boarding on a 10-day Princess Caribbean sailing out of Port Everglades. Several of them had called Princess ahead of time and been told their birth certificate was valid. They showed up with their documents, confident. They were turned away. The itinerary included a Panama Canal transit and stops in Central America, which required a passport. No refund. Princess's official statement afterwards said, and I'm quoting, that passengers must take responsibility for their errors, and that it remains the passenger's sole responsibility to have the correct documentation, even if a cruise line representative provided incorrect information. Let that sink in. Even if someone at the cruise line tells you it's fine, the legal responsibility is yours. So here's the honest truth. Unless your itinerary is a straightforward closed-loop sailing that never leaves US, territorial waters or Canada carry a passport, full stop. And even when a birth certificate is technically permitted, it must be the original certified copy issued by the state, no photocopies ever. Your photo ID must also match the name on that certificate exactly. Number 3, a passport that isn't as valid as you think. You have a passport, good. But is it actually valid for your cruise? There are 3 traps here that I've seen catch people repeatedly. First, every cruise line I've checked requires your passport to be valid for at least 6 months after the final day of your cruise. Not the day you sail home, the last calendar day of the trip. Check the expiration date now, not the week before you sail. Second, if your itinerary includes Europe, particularly the Mediterranean, there is a rule that trips up a lot of British and European travelers. Your passport's expiration date must fall within 10 years of the date it was issued. If your passport was extended for any reason, even if it technically covers the dates of your cruise, you may be denied boarding in European ports. A British couple, Andrew and Sandra Sutherland, found this out when they tried to board a Cunard Queen, Victoria sailing to Spain and Portugal. Their passport had been extended. They were denied boarding. No compensation. Third, some countries require a minimum number of blank pages remaining. South Africa, for instance, has historically required at least 2 blank pages for visa stamps. If your passport is nearly full, you may have a problem at certain ports even if the expiry date is fine. Check all 3 of these before you finalize any booking, not after. Now, before I get to number 4, I want to mention something. We've already covered timing, birth certificate, documentation, and passport validity, and there are 6 more reasons on this list. including one around visas that is actively changing right now and will affect anyone planning a European sailing. But if you want everything we cover today and everything that doesn't fit into a 20-minute video laid out step by step as a complete reference you can use every time you book, the link is in the description, and you can scan the code on your screen right now. The Seasoned Cruisers Complete Pack. It's the kind of resource I wish I'd had before my first dozen sailings. Now, back to the list, because number 4 is one that very few people think about until it's too late. Number 4, the visa problem, and this one is getting more complicated. Visas are the reason I see more boarding denials than almost anything else besides documentation, and the complexity has gone up significantly in recent years. Here's a real example. A family, not US residents, booked a Norwegian Encore Alaska sailing from Seattle. They correctly obtained their US ESTA travel authorization to fly into the country and board the ship. What they didn't realize was that the itinerary called into a Canadian port. Because they hadn't obtained Canadian entry authorization, they were denied boarding in Seattle. No refund. Here's the important point. Every non-US citizen taking an Alaska cruise that departs from a US port but stops in Canada needs both US and Canadian travel authorization. And if you're departing from Vancouver on an Alaska cruise, US citizens don't need a Canadian visa, but non-US citizens absolutely need ESTA or a full US visa to enter Alaska ports. The rules are different for every passport and every itinerary, and they're changing. The European Union is currently rolling out its own ESTA-style authorization system, the ETA, which means anyone who isn't an EU citizen will soon need to apply for it before sailing in European waters. This is new. Many longtime cruisers don't know it's coming, and it will catch people off guard. For every sailing you book, check the entry requirements for every country your ship visits, not just the country you're departing from. Official government travel websites are the place to do this, not the cruise line's booking page. Number 5. Travel insurance required, not just recommended. Most cruisers know that travel insurance is a smart idea. Fewer know that some lines actually require it as a condition of boarding. This isn't universal, but it's more common than people assume. Cunard, for example, requires passengers who book in the United Kingdom, regardless of where they actually live, to carry travel insurance that meets specific criteria. The policy must include cruise-specific coverage, must cover the entire duration of the trip and all destinations visited, and must include medical and repatriation coverage of no less than £2 million sterling. That's roughly 2.4 million US dollars. You have to be able to demonstrate that coverage at check-in. Expedition cruises to remote destinations like Antarctica or the Canadian Arctic almost universally require proof of insurance as well. If you sail there without it, you will not board. For most mainstream lines in most parts of the world, insurance isn't a hard boarding requirement, but the trend is moving toward more lines formalizing it, especially for sailings that visit medically remote destinations. Always check the specific requirements for your booking before you arrive at the terminal. And here's the broader point. Even where it isn't required, the cost of medical evacuation from a ship at sea can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Travel insurance for cruises isn't a luxury for people our age, it's basic financial protection. Check with your doctor about any health-specific coverage needs, especially if you have pre-existing conditions, since policy terms vary significantly. Number 6. Pregnancy restrictions. This one may not apply to most of us, but if you're traveling with family members who are expecting, it matters, and it can catch people completely off guard at check-in. Cunard, like virtually every cruise line, will not carry a guest who has reached or will reach 24 weeks of pregnancy during the cruise. A woman in Australia recently arrived to board a Carnival Luminosa sailing in Brisbane. Staff at the check-in desk noticed she appeared to be further along in her pregnancy than permitted. She was found to be 26 weeks. She was denied boarding, no refund. If you or someone in your group is pregnant and wants to sail, check the specific cutoff week for your line. It varies slightly, and be prepared to provide a doctor's letter confirming good health for travel and an estimated due date. Some lines require this documentation, regardless of how far along the pregnancy is, once a certain threshold has been reached. Most lines also have a minimum age for infants, typically 6 months for standard sailings, and 12 months for world, transatlantic, or exotic itineraries. Disney applies the same rules. Worth knowing if you're taking younger grandchildren along. Number 7. The items you should never pack and the check-in you should never refuse. This is the one I'd never skip explaining, because the details here are more nuanced than the headline suggests. Most cruise lines have a clear prohibited items list: clothing irons, drones, certain alcoholic beverages, anything that resembles a weapon. If these show up in your luggage at the scanner, they'll typically be confiscated. That's usually the end of it, inconvenient, not catastrophic. But there are two scenarios where it escalates to a full boarding denial. The first is CBD products. Earlier this year, a woman from Texas arrived at Miami's port terminal to board a Carnival cruise. She had a bag of CBD gummies in her backpack, purchased legally in her home state, used to help her sleep. When they appeared on the security scanner, she was denied boarding. Carnival has banned her from sailing with them for life. CBD is federally classified differently than it is at the state level in the U.S., and cruise ports operate under federal jurisdiction. What is legal at home may not be permitted at the terminal. The second scenario is refusing the security screening itself. If you decline to allow your person or your bags to be searched, you will not board. It isn't a negotiation. Have you ever had something flagged at port security that you thought was completely harmless? I'd genuinely like to know, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Number 8. Disruptive or intoxicated behavior at check-in. This one might seem obvious, but I'm including it because the cruise lines have been updating their policies around it recently, which tells me it's happening more, not less. P&O Cruises, a sister company to Cunard in the UK, recently updated their alcohol policy guidelines to include this language, and I'm quoting, "We reserve the right to deny boarding to any person who appears to be under the influence of alcohol." That is now in writing, in the official policy. Not implied, not informal, written policy. The same logic applies to any behavior that is threatening, aggressive, or disruptive during check-in. Cruise lines take this seriously, because if someone creates significant disruption before they even board, the calculation of what happens at sea becomes very straightforward. They will not let that person on, and no refund follows. This is worth mentioning not because I expect anyone watching this to show up intoxicated, but because delays, frustrations, and tensions at busy port terminals can escalate. Keep calm, stay patient, and remember that the check-in staff have the authority to end your cruise before it starts. Number 9. COVID-19 and illness policies, and why you need to read the fine print on your specific line. This last one is genuinely unsettled, and I want to be honest about that rather than give you a false sense of certainty. The policies vary significantly by cruise line, and some lines have been clearer than others about what happens if you arrive showing symptoms. Cunard, for instance, states that if you experience COVID-19 symptoms or test positive in the 3 days before embarkation, you should declare it at the terminal, where the ship's medical team will assess your fitness to travel. That's an evaluation process, not an automatic denial. Norwegian Cruise Line, on the other hand, states more firmly that any passenger with a high fever or confirmed COVID-19 or recent contact with a confirmed case is unlikely to be permitted to board. The practical takeaway is this. The policy is not the same across lines, and it may have changed since the last time you checked. If you're sailing soon, go directly to your cruise line's current health policy page and read it. Don't rely on what applied to your last sailing or what someone in an online forum told you. The rules are still evolving. And more broadly, if you feel genuinely unwell before a sailing, contact your cruise line. Some lines do have provisions for last-minute changes if you can document illness. Travel insurance, again, is your real safety net here. Now, none of this is meant to alarm you. I've been sailing for more than 20 years and I have never been denied boarding. Not once. But I also check my documents methodically. I verify visa requirements for every itinerary, I carry the right insurance, and I know my final boarding time before I pack my first bag. The cruisers who get turned away are overwhelmingly people who assumed one thing was true when it wasn't. The good news is that every single reason on this list is entirely preventable. None of it is bad luck, all of it is preparation. I'll be honest, the two that concern me most personally are visas and the passport validity rules, because both of those are moving targets. Visa requirements change. The EU's new ETA system is coming. Passport extension rules in Europe are not widely known. These are the ones worth double-checking on every booking, not just once. If you've had a boarding scare or worse, if you've actually been denied, I genuinely like to hear your experience in the comments. What happened and what did you do? There's real value in those stories for everyone in this community, and I know a lot of seasoned cruisers watch this channel. Tell me below. Next time, I'm covering the things inside the cruise contract that most passengers never read, and a few of them will genuinely change how you book. Subscribe so you don't miss it. If this was useful today, a quick thumbs up before you go helps more people find this information, and that's the whole point. Smooth seas, and I'll see you next time.